Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining today for this Lamplight lunch. My name is Brittany. Most people call me Smash. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really delighted today that we have with us Anna from ONE Northside, who is going to be talking to us about the Bring Chicago Home campaign. We are members of this campaign. It's a campaign that's really important to us at the Night Ministry and the work that we do. So we are excited to learn more. And then after the presentation, we'll have plenty of time for questions. So if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. But thanks again for coming. And Anna, welcome. Thanks for being here. And we are ready for you to roll.
Excellent. Thank you, Smash. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Gabler. I also use she, her pronouns. I am an organizer on staff with ONE Northside. You may be familiar with ONE Northside. If you're less familiar, want a refresher, we are a community-based organization of which the Night Ministry is a member, which we appreciate very much. And I'm excited to be speaking with you all today. We are an organization that is based in the tradition of community organizing, grassroots organizing for social, racial, and economic justice. So that means, there are a lot of ways to create social change in the world. And the one that we are focused on is bringing people together, people in the community who are directly affected by the issues of social, racial, and economic justice, and developing their leadership to make change that we want to see at the local, state, and federal level. And so I'm really excited to be here speaking with you all today about one of the campaigns that we're currently working on that Smash mentioned, called the Bring Chicago Home campaign. So I'm going to kind of break down what is the campaign, what is this like, what is the current status of the campaign, where are we at in pushing it forward, and then also lay out some potential action steps as we move into the summer. It's going to be an important summer for us because we are trying to get the resolution passed through City Council. So we're going to be ramping up. So I'll share a little bit about kind of what the future looks like for this campaign as well. But before we get started, I know a number of you know each other already, but I don't know you. And something that's important to us in community organizing is our own stories and our own experiences. And that's kind of the fuel that we use to build power and build community. So if folks are willing to share, and also I want to bring back what you shared, Smash, about this not being in the recording if you don't wish it to be. But the question I wondered if people could share, and I'll share my screen for a moment so folks can see it, is this can be opt-in, but what has been your experience finding housing in Chicago? And I can just warm up the space by sharing a little bit about my experience. Stop my share. I think people saw the question, but yeah, I live on the north side. I moved back to the Chicago area after college. I'm originally from the area, and ever since I've moved back, I worked in AmeriCorps, which didn't make a lot of money in AmeriCorps, and I work as a community organizer, not the world's most lucrative jobs. And I really wanted to stay on the north side because of my connection to ONE Northside. And the way I've been able to do that and find housing is living communally. So I share housing with a lot of roommates. I've lived in a couple of different co-op situations, and that's been able to make my life affordable. But if I wasn't okay with that situation, or for some reason I wasn't able to live communally with others, I don't know how I'd be able to live on the north side. So my story is, I've been able to stay in the neighborhoods that I want to live in, but definitely have not been able to, live on my own, and had to kind of piece together a situation with others. So that's my story. So yeah, if anyone is willing to share, what has been your experience finding housing in Chicago?
I'd like to go. This is Allison. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good day. I've lived in Chicago. I started living in Chicago in 2016 after I graduated college, and I did a year service. It wasn't in the AmeriCorps system, but living communally, all my basic needs covered. But I worked for free for a year for a nonprofit, And then I'm originally from the suburbs. So after that year completed, I lived at home for 9 months while working full time. So with that, I was able to, put savings together and kind of feel more financially stable to then move back into Chicago in like 2018 to Logan Square. And I've been here ever since. And, every time it's like I try to, I've lived in 3 different apartments in that time, and I've been very fortunate to have really low rent, like below marketplace, I would say. But it's so stressful. Just, you want certain needs to be met, and that just costs more. Or yeah, I've always had roommates as well, people that luckily are so important to me. So that's worked out nicely. But it is certainly like, oh God, I would do anything to not have to like move and try and find, a situation. Yeah, so that's been my experience. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Allison. Is anybody else willing to share?
I would share. My name is April. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm the marketing coordinator at the night ministry. I had lived in Chicago like 10 years ago, back when it was relatively cheap. At least that's my memory of it. And I moved back like a year ago, and I was really surprised by how much the rents have gone up. Um, I'm lucky enough to live with my partner who makes more money than me. Like, also, I work in a nonprofit, so it's not like a big money maker. Um, but we were also lucky, and we were able to find a place that was below market rate. But we are thinking about buying a place soon, and we're definitely, like, I'm 100% sure we're priced out of our current neighborhood. So um, we're gonna have to do some sleuthing to find somewhere else soon. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, April. Yeah, I think let's have maybe time for one more person. Jenny, Debbie, Lisa. Oh yeah, Debbie.
I just wanted to introduce myself more than anything. I'm a suburbanite, but I am with an organization called National Council of Jewish Women, and we did some work with night ministry earlier this year. They came to our section to tell us about what they do and how we could possibly help. But we advocate for legislation, so I wanted to know what was going on. So I'm just going to listen. I don't want to crash your party. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. And Debbie, I mean, I encourage you and challenge you maybe to also think about your personal housing story. And I think why I encourage people and push people to think about this is because this is an issue that truly affects all of us. I think when we think about homelessness, there's a very specific picture that comes to mind of folks living on the street, perhaps tent cities. But in reality, the picture is so much bigger than that and so much deeper than that. Folks living doubled up, folks living in shelters, and then, even more removed, some of the stories shared here, stories of some security, but not total security, not knowing how much a landlord is going to raise rents. A lot of folks living, a paycheck away or one emergency away from being in a really tight housing situation. And so I want us to just feel grounded in that and feel grounded in how this issue affects all of us as we move into talking about this campaign. So I'm gonna share my screen one more time. So I'm gonna share first I'm gonna share the overview of what the campaign is, because you're all probably like, what is Bring Chicago Home? Let me just hear what it is. But then I'm gonna take folks through more of the details about how this campaign works, how the legislation works, why we decided to pursue this campaign, and then getting into sort of the process to get it passed. But just to give a big picture, so the goal of the Bring Chicago Home campaign is to create a new dedicated revenue stream to fund affordable housing with supportive services, specifically for people experiencing homelessness in shelters, on the streets, and doubled up. That is the overall goal. We're going to break down what that means. I will share the phrase dedicated revenue stream means guaranteed money every year going towards affordable housing. We'll get into this, but right now the city passes a budget every year, and from one year to the next, the amount of funding for housing could be completely different. And it also depends on who's in power at that moment, what the city's financial situation is at that moment. So we see huge fluctuations in funding for housing, and we also don't see enough funding. So that is why we're trying to get what is called a dedicated revenue stream to fund affordable housing. Okay, let me go backwards in my slide here. Okay, so that's the overview. I'm going to go through some details and then I'll pause kind of between each section for questions. But just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, the problem of homelessness in our city. I know we all know it, we all see it, we maybe have experienced it ourselves, but just to kind of put a number on things, over 58,000 people were experiencing homelessness in Chicago before the pandemic. So we know things have only gotten worse during the pandemic. So that figure is definitely much higher, but that was the last time this data was collected. But yeah, we can assume there's many more than that. And so, actually we had a rally on Monday, and our chief sponsor, the alderman who is, sort of leading the charge in city council, Maria Haddon, brought up a really amazing point, which is 58,000 people is how many people live in one ward of our city. So our city is made up of 50 wards, and folks who are experiencing homelessness could constitute one of those wards, so 1/50th of our population. That was really powerful for me to kind of put that number in context. And again, it's even greater than this. This is also a racial justice issue. Of course, all issues are connected, and we know that folks of color are the ones hit hardest by the housing crisis right now. So 4 out of 5 folks experiencing homelessness out of that number do identify as African American or Latino. Just to continue kind of painting the picture of where we're at now, getting a little bit more into funding, because that is what this campaign is all about. Last year, we actually did see a big bump in funding towards housing. You can look around this pie chart here and see where the money went. We got $117 million towards things like permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and then even some additional money, 71 million, went towards this, designated by law for housing. All of this money came from what is called the American Rescue Plan Act. People maybe have heard of it, called ARPA. So this is a federal COVID relief bill. That means, the federal government gave the city of Chicago a lot of money. Some of it was earmarked for things like housing. Some of it was funds that could be used for anything. A lot of it did get used on housing, but we know that that funding is temporary. So that money is finite. It's going to run out. It's a one-time infusion of cash. It is not going to solve the problem long-term. So to drive that point home, we can see what the city, oops, sorry about that. Oh, let me go back. Okay, there we go. One more graph with numbers and then we'll be done with graphs. But we can see here what the city actually spent of its own money. So its own coffers that it gets money from tax revenue. We only spent $26 million on homelessness last year. So if we don't count that temporary money out of our current pot of money, we're only spending 26 million. And if we compare that to cities like Los Angeles and New York, they are spending so much more than us. Obviously, like, they're a little bigger in size, but the proportion is still where New York and Los Angeles per capita are just spending tons more money on homelessness. So we are really kind of behind other peer cities when we look at funding for homelessness. And this is really the problem that Bring Chicago Home is seeking to remedy. Maybe I'll pause there. Do people have questions or reactions to sort of those numbers or the budget picture?
I think my reaction is like, wow, we're not spending as much money as those cities. And also those cities aren't spending enough, right? Like, I know that homelessness is still a huge issue in those cities and they're not addressing it as well as they could either. So not only are all of the big cities in our country behind, but we're like super behind. That was what first came to my mind.
Yes, even the benchmark is low there. So yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, what you just shared really kind of solidifies and confirms things that I've seen. I'm sorry, I completely didn't even think when I was speaking earlier, but I'm a youth outreach case manager. So my job is to help young people that are housing unstable to seek long-term solutions. I also use she and her pronouns, but I started in 2020, and in 2021 we started having accelerated moving events that really were like, you know, exciting, tangible, fulfilling moments because we were moving folks out of the shelter into independent housing. But the city was always pretty clear that these were temporarily funded, subsidized apartments, right? Um, so it's kind of, in the back of our minds, I think we've had, and I'm kind of saying we on behalf of like the yacht team, my coworkers that I've had over this time, we know that like the other shoe will drop. And because rent is so expensive and because of the many barriers stacked against a person experiencing homelessness, that it's like, oh, it doesn't feel like a great prognosis per se. And then I don't work with the FHP, the flexible housing pool program, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I just wish there are so many people that are experiencing, have been formerly incarcerated or have been hospitalized and experiencing homelessness. It's like, I just think like more, 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 more. And I want more landlords to accept these vouchers. It's just like we have the solutions in place and it's so frustrating when very little movement is made. So yeah, thank you. That again, that's just really like putting a data analysis into the experiences that we're having out there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Allison. Right. And yeah, I know many of you, I don't know, I can't say all of you, but are working in connection with housing issues or with social services and have that on the ground experience and know what it looks like for people to not have options or have these sort of temporary options. And so thank you for kind of bringing that experience in, Allison. Any other questions about the budget numbers? And then I'll move on to share what our solution is. Okay. Yeah, April.
Sorry, I do have a question. Are the budget numbers normal, or is it like recently they've been reduced?
I'd say it's fairly normal. Like the statistic that we were using before we were using this statistic is, I think 2018 or 2017, and that statistic is that Chicago, it comes in 10 out of the 11 cities with the largest homelessness problem for funding per capita. And so it's really a chronic issue. Yeah. Well, so this is the problem that a group of organizations identified, was a chronic lack of funding, as sort of one of the root causes of the homelessness crisis in our city. And so, yeah, just to kind of share, One Northside is a part of a larger coalition that is citywide. We are working together with a few other organizations that are listed here: Jewish Council on Urban Affairs, the Coalition for the Homeless, Communities United, United Working Families, and SEIU, the union, the healthcare union. I see. Are you all connected with All Chicago? I don't think we are, but I'd love to make the connection if they're an organization that might support it. But yeah, that name doesn't ring a bell. Yeah, did you want to speak, Joanna?
Hi everyone. I'm I just wanted to just add that I thought that the connection between you guys and All Chicago would be like a great connection. Only due to the fact that like I'm currently on the Youth Action Board, which is a group of homeless youth that are put together to end youth homelessness in Chicago. And I'm not sure if you guys heard of us yet, but we're also having a fundraising event coming up soon. Um, just to put that out there. But I think that definitely All Chicago should be at this table. I feel like that would be a great connection, and I could personally reach out uh, to someone there to see about bringing on that connection, because I definitely think that um, the amount of funding, if put together in the right way, would be a successful outcome if you know what I mean.
Mhm. Definitely, yeah, and that's amazing. I'm excited to hear that you guys exist, and I'll actually put my email in the chat, so maybe we could just follow up personally about that connection there. So yeah, feel free, and that goes for anyone. Feel
Yeah,
free to
that
send
would
me.
be great. We at the Night Ministry are a member of like the Continuum of Care for All Chicago. So All Chicago does a lot of the organizing of organizations who provide homelessness services. So I definitely think that would be another great connection, Anna.
Yeah, yes. Awesome. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, so our goal is to solve this issue of chronic underfunding and create a dedicated revenue stream to fund affordable housing with supportive services. So specifically permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness in shelters on the streets and doubled up. First question is, where would we get the money? So we can't just pull that money, that guaranteed money, out of thin air. So our coalition put our heads together. We talked with, policy folks and organizations across the country for how to learn how cities do this, outside of Chicago. And the solution that we came up with is we want to change what is called the real estate transfer tax. The real estate transfer tax is a one-time tax on properties when they are purchased. How do we want to change it? So this tax already exists in Chicago. It applies to any property being sold. What we want to change is to increase the transfer tax on properties that are worth over $1 million. And we want to raise that by a little bit under 2 percentage points. Which actually puts the rate in line with a lot of other major cities. So we have a pretty low rate right now. All we want to do is bump it up to be aligned with other cities for properties worth over $1 million. The vast majority of property sales are not going to be affected by this. So only 4% of property transactions will be affected. So if you think about, a family buying their first home, maybe buying a bungalow or something, they're most likely not going to be affected by something like this. I don't know, maybe bungalows in very rich neighborhoods are worth $1 million, but we're not trying to harm, families buying their first home or most residential transactions. And the majority of the transactions that would be affected are actually commercial. So if you think about a corporation buying a big office building in downtown, those are the folks that we want to be paying. That's who this is really targeting. If we made that small change, it would generate $167 million in revenue every year that would be dedicated to fight homelessness. So if we think back to that previous number I shared, last year, the city coughed up $26 million in addition to the temporary funds. This would be $167 million annually. So that number is going to be bumped way up, and it's going to be money coming in every year. That's the concept. I'm going to share how we actually get this done, and then I'll pause for more questions. But the real estate lobby made it really hard to change that real estate transfer tax. So there's a 3-step process to get this actually made into law. The first thing we have to do is get a referendum on the ballot. So the city council has to vote by a majority, And like I mentioned, there's 50 aldermen. So 26 of them need to vote to say, yes, let's put this on the ballot. Let's let the voters give their opinion on this question. That's the phase we're in right now. So our current campaign is to get the city council just to vote to put this on the ballot. Once it's on the ballot, we need voters to give it a thumbs up by a simple majority, so 50% plus one. And then city council has permission to actually pass the ordinance spelling out exactly where the money's going to go and with all the specifics. Once that is passed and it becomes law, then that money is dedicated. Like I mentioned, so we're in the phase where we're trying to get this passed through city council. Up on the slide is a list, and I won't read them all, of the city council members who are currently signed on. At this point, we have 11 co-sponsors. I did just learn yesterday that we maybe have 5 more about to sign on, so that's exciting. So 11 now, hopefully 16 in the next week. And we need that majority in order to pass this, so we need 26. And it's sort of a numbers game, but it's also a power game because the mayor, Lori Lightfoot, does not support this resolution. She actually ran on a campaign that supported this, and then when she got in office, she decided she didn't support it, and she's been actively trying to stop us from moving this forward ever since. And so our strategy now is to continue to get more support in the city council, especially from some of the powerful groups within the city council. You might have heard of the Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus. These are kind of groups of aldermen that share either identity or they share ideology and work together as a bloc and have had some influence over the mayor in the past. So we've been trying to lock in support from those sorts of groups and lock in support from our aldermen. But until the mayor gives this a thumbs up, because even if it's begrudgingly, we really are not going to be able to get this passed. So again, right now, our strategy is pushing on some of the aldermen who are influential, some of those, trying to get some of that block support. And then just to share kind of, once we get this passed, because we will, what would actually happen with that money? So as I mentioned, it would be $167 million every year. And we want that money to be going towards permanent housing with supportive services, as well as SRO preservation. And yeah, our priority is definitely to kind of address what you're talking about, Allison, right? Like we don't want more temporary options for people. We really want permanent options for people to create stability and keep people housed. So this could include building new housing, preservation of existing housing, and then all of the wraparound services that come with permanent housing, which I know all of you know very well. So mental health services, job training, all of that. And with that dollar amount coming in every year, the projection is we could house 12,000 families in 10 years, which is a pretty astounding number to me. So that is what we're seeking to do. Okay, I'll stop sharing again, and then we'd love to hear questions and reactions one more time. Go ahead, Joanna.
I was thinking, is from the PowerPoint that you just shared, the last one that was just up, just in reference to the goals that were set, are those like set in stone already, or are you guys adding to it? Because I think that it would be a good idea too, with the funding, to also put it into vouchers that either youth or adults can obtain, that would also support that permanent supportive housing, but also being able to create that stability of subsidies, so that it's like portion rent, but not like more than they can afford, like, so just thinking that could be something that
Yeah, thanks for adding that. And I do believe vouchers are on the list of things we want to see funded. For some reason, they weren't on the slide, but I really appreciate you bringing that up. And it's actually not set in stone how we want to use the money. I think we've strategically left it a little bit open so that we can bring more people to the table to kind of craft what that will look like. And once this is passed, we want to create an advisory committee. Part of what, we want to make sure we don't do is have this funding come in, but then have people in power who aren't aligned with us deciding where it goes. So part of our demand is to have a committee of people who will have power over where that money goes. And we want to see at least half of the folks in that committee be people who are formerly experiencing homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness. So we can really make sure that that perspective is centered. So yeah, it's a work in progress, not set in stone, and we want to make sure we'll continue to have power over where that money goes. So thanks, Joanna, for that. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. This is really exciting and really great to learn more about. It seems like the focus is more so on like permanent supportive housing, more so than kind of temporary living and shelter programs. Is that true? Is that sort of where the focal point of this campaign is?
Yes, I think it is. I don't think there's opposition to some of the funding going towards temporary options, but I think because the permanent is often short shifted for the temporary, we wanted to make sure to center the permanent.
Great. That's kind of how I always understood it. And that's exciting to see because there's just a lack of more permanent, permanent, but also supportive housing. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Other questions or reactions? As some of the tax stuff can bring up questions sometimes, so I want to create space for questions about that as well. Go ahead, April.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, but I think I'll just ask one. How much time left do you have to get the signatures that you need?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I guess my timeline slide got deleted. So thank you for bringing up something that I had wanted to cover. So yeah, we are still shooting to get this on the ballot for November. So for the general election, and the deadline to do that is August. So this is something that we're trying to move across the finish line in City Council, either in June or July. So in the next couple months. If that doesn't happen, we can put this on the ballot in February. So we have a lot of elections coming up in Chicago. And so we'd have a more extended deadline for that. But we're trying to create the urgency to get this done in the next couple months. But we can technically push the deadline back. I don't, did you have your hand raised from before, Jenny, or did you have another
I
question?
actually have another question.
Okay, great. I never know. So yeah.
Thank you. I know I always forget to put it down. So I myself live in Cook County, but in the suburbs of Chicago. What would you recommend is the best action for someone who doesn't have a city alderman?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think because you work with the night ministry, I forget where your offices are really based. Is there like a
kind of like north in Ashland, the Bucktown neighborhood?
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. I guess I forgot this. I'll get into this, but our current target as ONE Northside is Alderman Scott Wagasback, and that is the alderman there. So this is great. I in the virtual days, I just forget where people's brick and mortar offices are, but that's serendipitous. So yeah, I mean, I think for folks not living in the city, right, it's not the same as being a constituent calling up your alderman, but and I'll share this in the action steps as well, but I think it's perfectly legitimate to call up Alderman Scott Wagasback and say, you know, you work for the night ministry, which is based in his ward, and you know, I think that still holds some sway.
Great, thanks. And just sharing with people who do live in the city, what would you say is the best? I'm sure there's all kinds of different places to share information about the campaign. Would you suggest social media or your website?
Yeah, and I have some links that I'll slowly start putting in the chat. But yeah, we have a great website. It's just bringchicagohome.org. Oh, it didn't hyperlink for some reason, but yeah, that's a great place to point people to. And then there's a way to sort of get on the newsletter, like the action alerts, and also you can contact your alderperson on that website. So that's a good kind of landing place for folks who you do know in the city. Yeah, Debbie, I see put a question in the chat. Do you have a list of aldermen that you are targeting? Yes, we do. So as I mentioned, we're part of a coalition. So One Northside has taken on some target aldermen, and then the other organizations have taken on target aldermen across the city. Just to kind of start with the North Side. So we had taken on Alderman Harry Osterman in the 48th Ward, which is Edgewater, and we were able to get him to sign on, which is a big victory. So we're making progress. So we're moving on to the next, which is who I mentioned, Alderman Scott Wagsback, who is the alderman of the 32nd Ward. So that's Bucktown, Wicker Park, Roscoe Village. Yeah, that's mainly it. And so that's going to be our main target now moving forward as One Northside. So this is in the action steps, but if you live in that ward, if you know people who live in that ward, we're in a phase of just relationship building. So I'm trying to just meet people who live and work in that ward. And again, I had forgot that the night ministry is based in that ward, so I'm doing that right now. But yeah, getting connected to as many people as possible who live, work, or worship in that ward is kind of our project right now for Scott Wagsback. But yeah, then to kind of finish answering your question, Debbie, beyond the North Side, our main additional targets are Alderman Jason Irvin of the 28th Ward. So he is sort of West Garfield Park area. He is a target because he is the chair of the Black Caucus. So I mentioned we're trying to get those blocks of aldermen to support. So if we can get the chair to support, usually there can be a little domino effect there. So he is our target that we're mainly focusing on the west side. And then on the south side, our targets are Sophia King, Alderman Sophia King of the 4th Ward, and Alderman Leslie Harrison of the 3rd Ward, both of whom are also leaders in City Council. Alderman King heads up the Progressive Caucus, so she's another person with that chair title, so she influences others. We're still working on those three. So yeah, do folks have a sense of like what ward, if you live in the city, what ward you live in? Do people know that, or share your neighborhood? And you're in 46, right, Smash? Or okay.
Yeah, so probably not a target right now, just because, you know, doesn't seem likely. Probably better to focus where there's more hope in that, I would assume.
Yes, that's kind of where we've landed too. Yeah, were you gonna say something, Allison? Do you know?
Yeah, I was, sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I took a picture of your list of people that have signed on, and I don't recognize, but I'm not sure. I'm at Kimball and Fullerton because I know the district or the area is very chopped up. So I know I'm not in La Spada's district. I was at for a year when I lived in a different place, but I don't think it would be a simple Google search, but yeah, I'll definitely get on that and see. I believe my older person is a woman. Yeah, but again, I'll take a look.
Yeah, and another link I'll put in the chat, and this one did hyperlink, is if you don't know who your alderman is, I've shared the link to find out. It takes you to the Chicago City website, but it's a shortened link, so it's bit.ly/who's my alder. Oh wait, maybe it's who is my alder. Hold on, if that doesn't work, let me put in this one. Yeah, and maybe it seems like we're kind of moving into it, so let me share kind of an overview of our action steps now. I think we've covered most of them. You all beat me to the punch. But here are the action steps that we are focused on right now. I'm also curious if people have ideas about, you know, how the night ministry might be able to support this campaign, or other ideas about how we can move this forward. But yeah, I mean, our action steps currently are, you know, if you're an alderperson, if you look up your alderperson and they weren't on that supporters list, call them, email them, ask them to support Bring Chicago Home. And you can find their contact info at that link which is, yeah, it is Bitly, who is my alder. Sorry about that. Yeah, and then if you don't live in the city, or if you do live in the city, kind of amplifying this. Think about free friends or family members who might be interested in this. Share a little bit about this campaign. You can point them to the website. Ask them to contact their alderperson as well. If you want to step it up beyond that, we are going to have some actions this summer. Since we're trying to get it passed, we're going to have to be out there in the streets. Our first action coming up, the date is TBD because we're actually trying to coordinate it with one of the aldermen's ward nights where he'll be there. But we are hoping to get that on the calendar soon, and action on that individual I mentioned, Alderman Jason Urban, who's the chair of the Black Caucus. That's going to be like an in-person action rally in the Garfield Park neighborhood. So if you'd like to be kept in the loop about that, again, there's a link on the slide. I'll put it in the chat too, and maybe there's a way to email these out afterwards just so they don't get lost in the fray. But that should be really exciting. We just had another in-person action on Monday. It was super energizing. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, so ONE Northside, we're really focused on the 32nd Ward. So again, that's Roscoe Village, Bucktown, Wicker Park, and the alderman there is Scott Wagstack. And right now we haven't gotten to the point of doing actions yet. We're really trying to build up our base, and I'm trying to build my relationship network in the 32nd Ward. So if you live there, or if you work there, which many of you do, or if you know others who live there, or are even community leaders in that neighborhood, we're trying to make all of those connections. So yeah, if you want to share your contact information with me, or my information is up here on the slide, my email and phone number, I can kind of plug you into what's happening on that sort of neighborhood level. Yeah, do folks have other ideas about ways you could see yourself supporting this campaign, or ideas for how to move this campaign forward?
Yeah, I definitely think since we are in the ward where you all are focusing, and particularly Jenny has made lots of great relationships with folks in our ward. She's very good at that. I think we could continue to talk to our connects and even connect you with people we know in the neighborhood. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Not trying to throw you under the bus, Jenny. It's just, that's what you do really well.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate it. I would love to connect and just chat about like the community groups we've been working with and all of that. We did a lot of outreach in Bucktown as we moved our programming here in the last couple of years.
Great. Yes, I would love to talk offline or get coffee or something like that. Yeah, do other folks have any like ideas beyond what I just listed in our action steps about how to move this forward? Or where do you see yourself in this?
Yeah, I definitely see myself just sharing information, especially with people I know who live in the city. Like Smash said, there's a lot of community groups and just leaders in the neighborhood that I think would be interested. When we moved particularly our overnight shelter to the community, it really opened a lot of conversation just about homelessness and the root causes of homelessness and how it affects different populations differently and what are the best responses. And certainly we have a very temporary night-to-night shelter model, but a lot of people were interested in what do you do? How do you help young people beyond just that night? And we always mention we have case management and we help provide them with wraparound services, but reality is there's just not a lot of affordable housing or supportive housing past the temporary models. So I think this really aligns well with some of those conversations, especially here in Bucktown, but all over the city. Just what this is something people might feel good about supporting because they want to know, well, we could support a shelter, but then what? What happens once they have to leave? So yes, let's definitely get coffee.
Sounds good. Well, good. I mean, I hope everyone's able to at least email your alderperson. And I know it can be overwhelming to just like open a blank email. So it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can just be saying, hello, introduce yourself. If you want to share a little bit about who you are, that you work with the night ministry, that you're connected to this issue, and just ask them to sign on as a co-sponsor to the Bring Chicago Home resolution. So just them hearing from you is going to be good. It's going to keep it on their radar. So feel free to just keep it very simple. And same goes for calling. So I hope folks, if you know your alderperson and they weren't on that supporters list, definitely make that call. And if they were on the supporters list, it's also good for them to hear from you, just to share that you live in the ward, or you have a connection to the ward and you're glad to see them supporting. They always want to know that their constituents have their back. So it's good practice to just give them a call no matter what. And I'll definitely find a way to follow up with these links here. And yeah, I think unless there's any further questions or thoughts, that's all I have prepared. So thank you again for having me.
Thanks so much, Anna. This has been really helpful, and we are glad to be a part of this campaign and look forward to helping get it passed. Does anybody else have any questions for Anna before we wrap up?
I don't have any questions, but I really just like to say I really appreciated this. This was really great, and I was happy to be invited.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. And we will be posting this publicly, so feel free to share it with folks as you're telling them about the campaign. This is a great way to share more information so they know what's going on as well. So thanks so much. Oh, Allison, yes.
Sorry, I had one last minute question. Would it be possible, Anna, to send us if you guys have, not your presentation, but a one sheet flyer type thing? Just because social media can be a really useful way to spread information. It's okay, I've loved hearing this information. I think I have a great understanding of what's going on now, but to kind of not have to present to my community, my friends and resources, hey, here's what you need to know. So, all that. Would that be possible to send to us? Or if that exists?
Yes, it definitely exists. We have it's a one pager, it's just a PDF. I can email that to you, Smash, if you are able to pass it along.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that and also the links that you shared as well.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay, anything else? Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming. We're excited about this campaign, and let's get it done. Thanks so much, Anna, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And everyone have a beautiful afternoon. We'll catch you next time.
Take care. Bye.